Ron Reed's impact on South Dakota is immeasurable. He spent more years as a community volunteer than in the work-for-pay world. With a passion for theater and a growing career, his life was then forever changed by the birth of his daughter, Kathleen. Her challenges needed attention and special services. But when Ron and his wife searched for help, there were no such programs in South Dakota. This led Ron into a lifelong advocacy on behalf of people who have mental and physical challenges. Through a career as the Secretary of Education and Cultural Affairs in South Dakota, Ron focused on the educational needs of all of South Dakota's citizens, including those with disabilities, and served at a pivotal moment in the national fight for disability rights.
When I started to think about all this excitement about being here, I was kind of flabbergasted with just being elected. When I started my professional career, I started out in the Department of Speech because I wanted to be a broadcaster, broadcasting baseball games, and found out I had to take a theater course in order to pass the exams. And so I did, and I was assigned to doing the stagecraft class. And at that particular time, the director asked if I would volunteer to move some scenery during the performance, and I was sure. So I was moving a great big wagon off stage, and there was a gal standing in the wings who didn't move, and I just kept pushing the wagon, and she didn't move. I kept pushing the wagons, and finally I hit her in the shins, told her to get the hell out of the way. 5 years later, I married her. Introduced my wife, Marion, the love of my life. I did start out a career in the theater, and I worked at 4 different universities across the state. Ended up at the University of South Dakota, and we were instrumental in developing the new Performing Arts Center there. But something happened in the way of doing this, and that was we gave birth to a child with special needs, my daughter, Kathy. And she was a very, very special child because she taught us a lot of things about life. She always has a smile on her face, and she always loves everything. So when we started looking for opportunities for her in the state of South Dakota, there were services for children with physical disabilities, but not mental illness. And so what we found was the advice from everyone was to put her in Redfield, the state mental institution, at 2 years old. That was not an option. So I started looking for other options for her life. And I got a letter from I'm going on a letter from Purdue University. And I said the only reason I'd leave South Dakota was that there was a program in Lafayette, Indiana, that would serve Kathleen's need. They said, we think we have a program of that nature. So we made the trip, and they hired me as head of the department, and there was a program there from birth, and it fit all of the needs that we had. Well, I was there for 3 years, and in the 3rd year, I got a call from South Dakota asking if I'd come back as Secretary of Education and Cultural Affairs. And I said no. I had all the programs that I needed. I was a tenured full prof at Purdue. What more can a person want? But Governor Knipe was persistent and kept calling me and find out if I would come back, and I kept saying no. But I returned to South Dakota for a retirement for Dr. Warren M. Lee with the Black Hills Theater. And when I got here, I got a call from the governor saying, well, you're in the state, will you meet with me? So I said, yeah, I'll meet with you. We had a nice conversation. I said, the only reason I would even consider coming back was that you would really incorporate the new federal law on requiring schools to provide education for children with disabilities. And he said, we'll do it. I said, well, I just signed a contract at Purdue, and so I can't change that now. 2 days later, actually, 2 days later he calls and he said, I just got off the phone with the governor of Indiana. And they'll release you from your contract if you accept the job. So I did, and I came to Pierre. And with pursuit of getting the public law into effect. And he had made a commitment to say he will get money from the government to put into that program for elementary, secondary schools in order to provide the kinds of services in South Dakota that were necessary. And he did that. I worked for him for 3 years. And we got a lot accomplished during that period with handicapped accessibility. But you never finished that project. And so when I ended my term there, I went to Rapid City, and a lot of the veterans coming from Vietnam were handicapped. And you look at housing situations, and they were not acceptable. They did not have doors and windows and bathrooms that actually met their needs. So I started building some houses that could meet handicapped accessibility. The fact of the matter is the stock market went to 18% inflation, and the market died. So I went to work for Black Hills Special Services in order to do what was necessary for children with disabilities. From there, it kind of grew out of need for other kinds of things, and I was introduced to YFS and helped the design and building of their first building. I worked also on all of the YFS buildings since then. The Community Health Center of the Black Hills recruited me with Dr. Hart, who was on the board at that time, and we built a brand new building for them. There are lots of things that I had done in the theater and continued to do, and we just did a major remodel in Rapid City, restoring the historic Central High School. And so I'm very, very proud of the activities that I was involved with and the successes that we have had. But the fact of the matter, it's a long road, and it just doesn't give up. Every time I walk into a building in which it doesn't have some automatic door openers to help a person with a handicap get in, it says the job is far from being done. And that it takes every one of us looking at that and talking to a store owner when you walk in that doesn't have that and say, how come you're not installing that? You know, I was delighted to walk into the Hall of Fame yesterday. But the fact of the matter is, I told the administration, I was disappointed that it doesn't have an automatic door opener into the Hall of Fame. You know, and so I'm going, we can look closely and think we're doing really great things, and sometimes it's right in front of us, and we all have an obligation and need to serve that need within all of our communities. So I just ask all of you to consider that as part of your goals so we can spread it across the state. I was going to end by saying Governor Noem has stated that she wants South Dakota to be #1 in the nation. Well, Governor, here's the way. You make South Dakota the most accessible city and state in the country, and then we'll really be #1.